Hi, I'm Tom Donahue, your host for another edition of BROC Talk Program Spotlight. Thanks for tuning in today to this wonderful community access PEG TV right here in Rutland, Vermont. One of the best in the state and, dare say, New England, maybe the country. We really appreciate our community access television and really appreciate you tuning in today to hear about some of the great things going on in the community. Many of them brought to you right there at 45 Union Street in Rutland by BROC Community Action and our fantastic staff that are working hard to meet community need where it's at. And so we've got a lot of great things going on and have had a lot of things going on this winter. And I want to kind of talk to you today about some of the data that we collect, and it helps us communicate to you, the viewers, and the citizens of the region how we're doing and how we track what we're doing so that we can be able to quantify the impact of our efforts and kind of put into perspective the volume of things that we do there at BROC Community Action, which is sometimes a pretty significant impact in a positive way on Rutland region. And we're proud to do that here and in Bennington County as well. I'm Tom Donahue. I am the CEO and host for BROC Talk Program Spotlight. And my guest on the program today, though, is Trevor Van Niel. Trevor Van Niel is our data analyst, and we call him the improvement coordinator. This is a position that is very, very important to the organization because we have a lot of reporting to do to the state, to the federal government, to municipalities, and to the general public about our volume of numbers and how we quantify those numbers and just how we're doing with the various programs that we implement. We implemented a number of new programs throughout the last 3 years of the pandemic that were unprecedented, really, times that we were ready to go to help people in need throughout the pandemic. Now we're somewhat post-pandemic, but we're finding ourselves very busy with family needs based really around the costs of goods and services going up with the rising costs of inflation. And even with inflation coming down per se, numbers statistically, we're oftentimes not seeing the prices go down in relation to that. And what that's doing is putting the squeeze on family budgets. It's been difficult, as many of you know. So a lot of folks are able to turn to us to say, how can we help? And we have various programs that oftentimes take some of the pressure off those family budgets. So with that, I want to say hello to Trevor Van Niel. Trevor, thank you for coming on our program today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be outside the office. I'm happy to be here today to talk about what's happening in the community.
Well, and I want to thank you too. You were outside the office just on Saturday as a local business that had been kind enough to donate $500 to BROC Community Action, and you were there to receive it on our behalf, and I thank you for that. So we have you also out in the field once in a while, get you out from behind that computer. But as I talked about earlier, just a few minutes ago to the folks watching, data is an important element of what we do.
Right.
I did want to let folks know that you actually were involved during the pandemic. I mentioned the pandemic-related programs with the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
Yes, I was.
And we really hired you and brought you in for that purpose, which you did a great job with. Ultimately, in that program, as you're aware, we did over $19 million in Rutland County through Vermont State Housing Authority, I should say now. Vermont State Housing Authority was in charge of that program. We acted as an affiliate to help people apply for the emergency rental assistance. So we acted as, the application assister, if you will.
Right.
And then Vermont State Housing Authority did a tremendous job of connecting those dots and working on behalf of clients in need of rental assistance, but the money typically went directly to the landlord, which was a great assistance to the landlord as well. But between Rutland and Bennington County, we helped assist the Vermont State Housing Authority in putting out over $30 million throughout the pandemic. And that was one of the first things that you did at BROC Community Action.
Yeah, it was a great way to get connected to the ground and to connect with the community during this unprecedented time. It was the height of the pandemic. And it was great to meet the folks that I began to serve and then transition to reporting agency-wide how many people we serve. So it was a really good introduction.
Well, one of the things we learned about you in the process, you did a great job with the VRAP, the acronym, the nickname VRAP,
Right.
Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program, that we were working with people in need in Rutland and Bennington counties on that program throughout the pandemic. One of the things we learned about you is that you liked numbers and data. And
Yes.
not all of us do. So,
It's not exciting, but to some people they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so when we had that opening, it said, gee, let's look at Trevor for that, because he has done a good job with the VRAP
Yeah.
program, and we didn't know about this sort of interest that you had in that
Excel.
kind of, yeah, exactly. So so since then, you have had some time to really get your feet on the ground, as you mentioned before. You were
Absolutely.
frontline before, and now a little bit behind the scenes when it comes to this number crunching. But I would ask, what your perspective has been since you came in at the beginning of a new program that we call
Right.
Outcome Tracker, and you've been developing that program and then designing data collection that is starting to show. And I saw you talking to Amy Scott this morning, our program director for the food shelf, the BROC Community Food Shelf. I know that, for instance, you've been working very closely with Amy on collecting more data, as one example.
Right. And so I think this position offered an avenue to explore the trends and impacts that these COVID-era programs that we've been having for the past 3 years have on our local community. So you were correct in saying I came in when the VRAP program first came out, and so it was an interesting experience. I first was helping with applications, getting the money out to people in need, and now we're at the tail end of the program. So I'm specifically interested in seeing the impacts that this program had on the community, where per se in 6 months everyone's going to end up, their financial state, their level of need they're going to be in. And so the role really allows you to track either month by month or throughout a certain time period the impacts of what I was doing to begin with when I started in this organization. And so it's really interesting to see the wind down of COVID era programs. I am working with the director of the food shelf, Amy Scott. We're tracking, there have been the end of the COVID era boost to the 3 squares. And so now there is going to be a reduction of that COVID era funding of $95 a month. We're going to see how that impacts the food shelf volume, when it particularly impacts. We've been seeing interesting tidbit that in week 3 of the month, usually there's some peak traffic there. So it's just identifying trends like that where the numbers can sort of tell a bigger picture of what's happening.
Yeah. Well, and that works operationally because it's so important to know if there's those peaks in a month that we can add more staff or volunteers, as well as making sure that we have the inventory, that we're doing our ordering according to that demand, and along with fundraising too. And I'd say food raising in this case is what I really mean to say, because there are various opportunities throughout the year to raise food for the food shelf, and soon we'll be doing a diaper drive with Father Bernie at the Rutland-Wallingford Catholic Community, which is the parishes of Christ the King. IHM rolled into that formerly, and St. Patrick's in Wallingford. But the diaper drive is something that we find is become important because, as you indicated, that increased need in the food shelf. And as I indicated, the tightness of family budgets, when you have young families and they're having a hard time making ends meet, they might not, diapers can be a financial burden. And the things that go with diapers for newborns and small babies. So being able to collect those things and making sure they're available to families, especially as you indicated at those peak times of the month, we're going to see more volume of people, can really make a difference in people's lives.
Right.
You know.
There's also, like you mentioned, there's also a story beyond, I guess, the numbers where you're looking at monthly income. There's also that unmet need of, per se, diapers, of food that does not really get adjusted into the formula when people are talking about budgets and how households spend their monthly allowances. So
Right.
it's important. And we've also had several programs that go to this unmet need of clothing as well.
Right.
We love to give away the winter coats,
Right.
The toys under the tree as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of programs that our organization does that goes beyond the state level programming and really is hyper local and tuned to the community need.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. You're exactly right. You know, we just came off of, so some of the programs were kind of, you now with on the data end are closing out.
Right.
You know, crisis fuel, which, you know, we're pushing upwards of half $500,000 in crisis fuel assistance throughout this last winter. We're below that, but we're pushing that number of close to $500,000 in crisis fuel assistance, and that's a significant need in Vermont. It's, you know, January and February are cold. We had less. It seems like we're getting less snow these days, but the cold's still
It's a
there.
mild winter.
You know, the furnace still runs, and so that's a significant program. And of course, that money goes to the fuel dealers and the utility companies and so forth. Not it helps out the household, but the funds are paid to the businesses or the utilities in this case. And then the other you indicated, the Warming Others, call it Warming Others Winter Clothing Drive, because we help families with, we started out really helping families with coats, but, and you indicated these aren't state, that one, the crisis fuel is very much of a state program and federal program, very well done by them, and we implement it. You know, we're their boots on the ground. The Warming Others Winter Clothing is something we created and do ourselves and fundraise, and thanks to this generous community, you know, we're able to continue to warm families with clothing because it turned out to be a big community need that needed to be filled.
It was.
And we're literally doing hundreds of coats and hundreds of accessories because we developed it to say, let's throw in fleece, let's throw in hats, mittens, scarves, boots, you know,
Boots
so
was
that
huge.
kids, snow pants. You know, the kids can't go out on the playground from school if they don't have snow pants, and that's a fact. You know, so we don't want the kids of lower income not being able to go out at recess because parents can't afford snow pants. So let's make sure we have plenty of snow pants. Those are interesting programs that we've added into the core programs that we have, like heating and feeding and housing. You know, some of the core programs. And then be able to meet the other needs by adding in these ancillary programs, as you aptly pointed out, including, you know, at Christmas time, at the holidays, doing, you know, Toys Under the Tree program, and even with our local Rotary Club, our Christmas tree, providing Christmas trees, you know, which we do well over 100 trees every year with our local Rutland City Rotary. So you're right. In tracking that need and demonstrating that need, because we don't want to do a program, as you know, that just chases the money. We're not interested in that. All of our programs are there because we see a gap or a need in the community that needs to be addressed, and then we'll step up to that versus creating a program because there's a grant involved. Doesn't interest us. We're there to solve local issues.
Absolutely.
And if it's already been done by another organization and being done well, we don't need to do that. They're doing it well. We'll support them and collaborate. We don't need to be the lead on that. Other programs, and like as an example, food shelves, you know, we work closely with, say, the Rutland Community Cupboard as an example. There needs to be two big food shelves, and there are.
Absolutely.
But that's one of those things that probably if they closed, all of their people would come to us, and vice versa. So it's, you know, it's really important to take the pressure off each other by having both of us operating virtually every day. You know, helping to meet that important need of feeding families. And we talked before the show today about the fact that we have been working so well with the Rutland Public School System, and I just give them and their cafeteria program so much credit because they've helped us with the annual program now that's called Bridging the Gap Summer Meal Program, and helping to provide meals for children that are in the school system and their siblings under 18 to make sure they have lunches every day during the summer months.
Right.
Which typically, if they're being fed up till the school lets out and then starts again when school starts up, there's that gap in the middle, and that's where we call the Bridging the Gap Summer Meal Program.
Absolutely.
And they're able to come to BROC Community Action, thanks to Rutland City Public Schools, and pick up those meals every day, Monday through Friday. And I think they add a little bit more on Friday, so they actually have a weekend meal.
Right.
That's such a significant program. It's it's not a cookie cutter program. It was created to meet that need in partnership with the Rutland City Public Schools, which is and their food program there, which just does amazing work and collaborates in a partnership with us. They create the meals and deliver them. We distribute them because we have that access as the trusted community partner. And we're even physically located in, one of the important locations, I think, in the city.
It's important.
Centrally located, just adjacent to downtown Rutland. So thank you for pointing out those additional programs that you've already recognized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting back to your job for a minute, when you're putting all the data into Outcome Tracker, you're now, and so the public understands part of what we do at BROC Community Action and what you do specifically, you have to quantify and basically pull all that data together for reports that are often due to the state or feds quarterly, typically quarterly.
Yep.
And so that's part of what, and I know this week you've done several.
It's the end of the quarter, so I have been quite busy, and I still explain to my parents every day what I do, so people are still a little ambiguous about what exactly it is. But I always try to say, other than just putting numbers on a spreadsheet, you are basically telling a story. You're telling a story of what the past 3 months has been looking like on the ground for people that are in crisis or in poverty or are trying to get that next step up. And so it definitely is one of the only proven ways that the feds determined to tell that story. So I think it's very important to make sure we do it right, we do represent as much as we can, and make sure that we get the most assistance that we can from the state and the federal government to go into everyday Vermonters' pockets.
Exactly, yeah, to meet those needs. And I should say, of course, the staff every day is collecting that data individually, one client at a time, and then you're quantifying that so that it goes into the quarterly reports that are required of these programs.
Absolutely.
And so, we're glad that they require it in that we're accountable, and that it's also great to be able to quantify the impact, which I'll talk about here in a minute. I did want to say to those folks just tuning in, I'm Tom Donhaue, your host for BROC Talk Program Spotlight, and we're talking today with Trevor Van Niel, who's the data analyst and improvement coordinator at BROC Community Action. And one of those things that may sound a little plain on the surface, data, it's like, but it's the truth of the matter is it's impressive to see the volume of data, and it's very important to have someone like Trevor on staff to be able to report it out to those organizations that we're responsible to, that we're good stewards of the public money, and that we're also be able to communicate that same information out to the general public at large, because it's important for us to tell people who support us year-round, what we're doing exactly in real numbers. So as an example of that, I have this little printout here that was a video that was Vicki Loomis created, who's our marketing and development specialist, or development and marketing specialist, regarding last year's numbers. And one of the first programs we have on here is coming up now that it's spring. And so we last year distributed what they call veggie starter plants, vegetable starter plants.
I didn't know there was a starter.
Yeah, and there's a little picture of them all out on the tables, but 505 veggie starter plants were distributed, which is just a great way to help people feed themselves throughout the summer.
Absolutely.
If you think about it. And the other one that we're real excited about, because it's going to be growing, no pun intended, but it's going to be growing this year, is our what we call farm to family coupons. We have a program that provides, it had provided recently up to over $16,000 in farm to family coupons for people in the two regions that we represent. But this year it's going to be more like $23,000. And the beauty of that program is that it is this coupon book that is $30 for the regular coupon book that's not senior, and then $48 for the senior booklet. And the coupon is as good as cash, and you take it to your area farmers market, and you can buy fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and herbs with this booklet. So you get, if you're a senior and get the booklet from us, we're the main distributor for this program in the region. And it's easy to get from us in the front door. We just qualify you and then give you your booklet right there. So you can go right to the local farmers market and buy all these fresh things that it's like having a book of $50.
Yeah.
48 for the senior book, but it's like saying have a book of $50 in it and go to the farmers market. It's pretty awesome.
Nutritious too.
And nutritious. So the fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, right from our local farms. At the same time, then you're spending that money back with them, in effect.
Right.
So that we're putting, in this case, about $23,000 of the money through this program goes right back into our small local farms.
Absolutely.
So it's a real win-win because for the folks getting the coupons, getting that fresh, nutritious food, and putting money right back into local farmers' pockets, which is supporting the economy at that level as well. So there's programs that we implement like that I just love.
Right. I think it's very Vermont.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Only here.
And then we talked about the food shelf, and we talked about the summer meal program last year, the numbers. So these are, this is what Trevor does, is been able to actually quantify numbers so that we can see what is the real impact when we talk about summer meals for school children that were distributed. You don't know, what does that really mean in numbers? 4,500, that's what that means. 4,500. And that was last summer. So it does help to have the data analyzed and be able to talk about the numbers, because who would ever realize that in that volume over the summer period that it really adds up to 4,500 meals, but that's a lot. And
It
it's
is.
impressive.
It's a lot of meals.
Yeah.
A lot of food being distributed.
Now, speaking of which, so good segue, thank you. But more of your numbers here in the food shelf. In total, 299,434 pounds of food distributed. So rounding up, just short of 300,000 pounds or 150 tons of food.
Amy Scott and her staff personally lugged it all.
Yeah, they do, and it's just, and we were, of course, we got the new walk-in cooler, which is on the outside of the building that we used. We were able to raise funds for in a variety of different programs that piece that together, and now we've expanded where we can take 8,000 pounds of frozen foods that we couldn't before, and that gave us the ability to do what they call the holiday shops this year, where we provided turkeys and all of the things that you do a holiday meal with for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it was just amazing.
It was so successful.
Yeah.
It was one of the highest volumes we've seen in recent years. The holiday shop period, the week before Thanksgiving and Christmas, was a very good time to be at BROC Community Action.
Yeah. And we couldn't have done that had we not had that expanded freezer capacity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What I like too is that we were able to get them in separate orders, because you have a quantity and you didn't want the quantities out, and we had some great support for those programs, like from the Women's Network at General Electric, for example, supporting that program, to name one. that we were able to do what they called, nicknamed turkey tickets. And so if we had 80 to give out and you had 100 people, that wasn't a problem because you gave out the first 80 and the other 20 you gave a turkey ticket. And as soon as we got the next 20 in, or the next 80 in, the first 20 people had the turkey tickets from before, and we were able to come by and get there. And it was automatically there for them with their turkey tickets. So it's not, because the last thing we want to do is turn people away and say, I'm sorry, we had 80 and you're number 81, you don't get one. You know?
Yeah.
So this way, with this concept that Amy had with the turkey tickets, we're able to make sure that everybody got one. Those things are phenomenal, but just to know that, you know, in total, you're giving out almost 300,000 pounds of food through the BROC Community Food Shelf in our year is staggering. And that's why data collection that you do is
absolutely
so important.
All go into Bennington and Rutland counties, all local distributed. It's an amazing thing to have. Exactly. It's an amazing asset to have in the community.
Yeah, and critical, really. But you mentioned the Toys Under the Tree last year. I'm looking at, you know, the numbers you quantified for us from last year. 2,000 toys distributed to 418 families. 2,000 toys to 418 families. That's amazing. Winter coats we talked about. 226 winter coats. And that was last year, and I think this year might even be more once we get that report together.
Absolutely.
226 last year. That's a lot of people in warm coats that were just without, you know, and it's just sad to think that they're without. It's heartwarming to know that.
It's a big expense too, 50, 75, sometimes dollars for these coats per person. You know, these people have families, so that's a lot of winter coats.
That's right.
A lot of expenses.
Yeah.
These programs really go beyond the programmatic state level need and really try to focus on families throughout the counties.
Exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned the Christmas trees, so I'll give you the number you gave us on that, which is 112 in partnership with Rutland City Rotary, 112 Christmas trees. So that's pretty amazing. We had, I mentioned the crisis fuel, which were, you know, upwards over 450,000, you know, pushing $500,000 last year, and same thing this year. Weatherization, we do, you know, weatherizing homes, and that's really important to people. We have crews out every day doing that hard work. We're the state's designated hitter for that, if you will. And last year, 542 units served, 1,122 people helped, and it's interesting, 114 of those homes with children under 18, 19 homes owned by veterans, 227 elderly helped, and 150 people with disabilities helped. So very important.
Electricity bill.
Exactly, your fuel and electric, and then put money back in your pocket, your budget that was maybe going out through the roof. Is now maybe going into your food budget. You know, so it all makes sense. We talked about the emergency rental assistance, and then the other I wanted to mention, because we have, as you know, two types of programs at BROC Community Action: crisis and assistance, and path forward. I call it a two-pronged approach. We always want to talk about that path forward. And we helped 417 businesses with micro business $5,000 grants. 417 micro businesses, with 94 of those were startup businesses, which is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. So, you know, you're talking over $2 million, and this program we implemented for all micro businesses in Vermont through our partners with the other 4 community action agencies in the state who did great work here. $2.3 million in $5,000 grants, but 417 micro businesses, and these are bridge grants, really, to get them through the pandemic and beyond the pandemic, so that they can expand or survive to stay in business. Very, very critical.
The value of that definitely is worth more than that 2.6, because keeping local businesses, that mom and pop shop open or even started, is so vital too, especially in a community where things might be fleeing, you know, things might be disappearing. And to have that local people stay here and to open businesses is critical.
Exactly, and to keep them, not only keep them open, but to keep them actually expanding,
Right.
in many cases, which I always put it in relative terms. A micro business, $5,000 grant to a micro business is like a $50,000 grant to a small business. It's all
Exactly.
relative to the size of, and a micro business is a business, as you know, of 5 employees or less. So, and that accounts what I call mom and pop. If it's a mom and pop shop, that's them plus 3, or,
Right.
Oftentimes it's just the 2 of them, a husband and wife, or, although a lot of these are, in the majority, were women-owned businesses, frankly. So there's single shops even, but it matters because they're employing, they're self-employed and growing their business.
Right.
And then the other ones, real quick, of course, the Child and Adult Care Food Program. Amy Fales heads that up for us. We work with 40+ area daycares, and they served collectively 161,000 meals to their kids in the daycares last year, and we reimbursed them through those meals through this program called Child and Adult Care Food Program.
Right.
That we implement. We're the boots on the ground for that program too, here in Rutland County and Bennington too. Very important because that put over $250,000 into the daycares to reimburse them for food they're feeding the kids in the daycares.
Right.
So 161,000 meals were served by these great daycares, and $250,000 was reimbursed to them for that healthy nutritional food that they serve, which is the program requirements.
It's very important.
Awesome program. I love some of these programs that we do, and I love talking about them.
Right.
Another one is our Community Justice Center, headed up by Damien and his team of 3 that just do tremendous work and working with people coming out of incarceration, working with victims, and working with even families who are getting supervised visitation.
Yeah.
And so last year they had assisted 24 victims of crime. They have helped volunteers and volunteer panels that are providing that service to us, which is really critical to have those volunteers on the panels working with these individuals. But they had 50 referrals in that program with individuals, and they helped families with 30 different families with supervised visitation, which is all really, really helpful to the family, and in this case, if it's through the Community Justice Center, if it's a restorative panel, it helps folks coming out of incarceration to get that opportunity to move their lives forward post-incarceration.
And be embraced by the community. Right. Have stakeholders in the community as well to hopefully prevent them from doing it again.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what we want to keep. The recidivism, as they call it.
Recidivism, yes.
We don't want them committing the crimes again, but actually contributing members of the community again instead, and part of the workforce, and living and working and recreating in our area.
Absolutely.
Because they've served their time and now they want to move their lives forward. And the Rutland County Community Justice Center does that at BROC Community Action, and does it well.
It's a great job.
Thanks to Damian Barnes and his team. And I think we may be running out of time, but I just want to mention too, something that's going to be upcoming and something we did a lot of, but we worked with the Vermont Department of Health to provide vaccinations and boosters. And I think that's really important, and they've recently reached out to us because they were kind enough to make sure we are heavily supplied with COVID tests that we distribute at BROC Community Action. If anyone is in need of a COVID test, we have them and can provide them. And that's just a way to keep it from spreading and keep the numbers down.
Right.
We like them down. We want to keep them down.
Stop the spread.
Let's get this thing in our rearview mirror once and for all. But also through the vaccinations, and they provide vaccinations also for flu shots that we've been doing at BROC Community Action, and even hepatitis A and B. So that's very important, and they have been reaching out to us recently to say maybe we would get into a sync where we'd actually do monthly vaccination clinics at BROC Community Action, which of course we love the Vermont Department of Health, and they work very well with us. They've been tremendous partners. And we'd love to partner with them on that, because that is something that is helpful for people to be able to have access to. And especially if you don't have insurance coverage of any kind, that there is no charge for these. So
that is key. Access is definitely the word. Access to these vaccinations.
Yeah, exactly. And access to all our programs, right? I think that reducing barriers and creating the access
Absolutely
has been really a focus of ours, and is working well. We're a very busy place.
We are.
It's like, yeah.
Eliminating barriers of poverty is a very time-consuming job, sir.
Yeah, and it's very, very helpful, because I have a saying, and I'll say it again, that the foundation of a great community is only as strong as how we treat our most vulnerable. So we want to say we have a great community. Let's take care of the most vulnerable, and then we really, truly do have a great, strong foundation and a great community. And programs like this matter and make a big difference for people in need. You don't want anyone, our neighbors, to be in this kind of need, and if we can help them through it and help them with a path forward, then we've done our job.
We have.
But Trevor, I tell you, it's been just a tremendous asset to have you on board with us.
Thank you very much.
It really has, and this data is so critical to be able to report out, to tell the government how we're doing, but even just as importantly to me, maybe more importantly, is being able to report it to the community.
Yes.
And let them know the volume that we're doing, and how we've been good stewards of their money, and how important it is to meet that need in the community, so that those most vulnerable are not suffering.
Absolutely.
But that we're there to help. And so with that, I think we're going to wrap up this segment of BROC Talk Program Spotlight. I want to thank Trevor Van Niel for being our tremendous guest at PEG TV today on the program. Trevor, again, is our data analyst and improvement coordinator, and is really making a big difference at BROC Community Action, and us being able to report out our success each year and our performance based on the numbers that he's crunching. Something I'd prefer to have him do, and then report them to me rather than, but he has a proclivity to do those kinds of things, and is doing it well. So we're happy that he's the one doing it, and doing a great job of it, so we can talk about those numbers to folks like you, and let you know what our needs are in the Rutland region, and how we're addressing them. So Trevor, again, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate this, and we want to thank Chelsea Vogel, and who's kind of runs this part of the station. And of course, I always want to say hi to Tom Leipold, our executive director here at PEG TV, for the great job him and his entire team here do at Rutland Region Community Television. We're so happy to have community access. And I just say in closing, check us out on broc.org, or follow us on any of the social medias. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, always putting out more and more things that we're doing every day. So like us or follow us, so you can keep up on what we're up to, and spread the word. If you know someone in need, have them reach out. We're a simple, good old phone number in Rutland is a 775, so we're 802-775-0878. You'll get one of our fantastic folks in reception, Claire or Denise. Again, 802-775-0878. You'll be talking to a human that can help you out at BROC Community Action. Thank you again for watching for PEG TV and BROC Talk Program Spotlight. I'm Tom Donahue. See you soon.